Oliver and Ruth Bennett lived quietly on the edge of Willow Creek, in a whitewashed farmhouse surrounded by sprawling fields and towering oak trees. Their home, though modest, exuded a warmth and dignity that money couldn't buy. The morning sunlight streamed through their kitchen windows, catching dust motes in the air as Ruth, her silver hair pinned back in a neat bun, poured coffee into Oliver's favorite blue mug. "Happy anniversary, my love," Oliver said, his voice gruff but tender, sliding a small, wrapped box across the well-worn oak-tabled Ruth's smile deepened the fine lines around her eyes as she untied the ribbon and opened the box. Inside was a brooch, carved from a piece of cherry wood, two roses intertwined so intricately it seemed almost alive. "You made this?" she whispered, running a trembling finger over the delicate petals. "Spent the last month sneaking out to the shed after dinner," Oliver said, a little sheepishly. "Thought it might match that lavender dress you like wearing to Sunday service." Ruth pinned it to her blouse with misty eyes. "It's perfect," she said simply. Despite building a fortune that most people could only dream of, the Bennetts had never embraced the flashy trappings of wealth. Their company, Bennett Pure Technologies, started in their garage with an invention Oliver had tinkered with for years, a revolutionary water filtration system. Ruth, with her sharp mind for strategy and business, had helped shepherd it into a multi-billion-dollar global empire. But they had never moved into a mansion, never abandoned their farm, never stopped living the simple, honest life they had always cherished. "Our Michael's graduating next week," Ruth said over her coffee, her voice tinged with both pride and disbelief. 18 already. Seems like yesterday he was just a boy chasing fireflies in the yard. Oliver chuckled. "Our first grandchild heading to college. Makes a man feel old. What should we get him?" Ruth mused. Oliver reached into his pocket and pulled out an old gold pocket watch, the kind that ticked loudly and felt solid in the palm. Its once polished casing had dulled with age, the chain worn thin. "What about this?" he asked. "Your father's watch," Ruth asked, surprised. "It's not much to look at anymore. Doesn't even keep perfect time. But I was thinking, what if we had it restored? Maybe added something special. Something he could pass down one day." Ruth smiled warmly. "An heirloom. I love that idea. We could have it engraved. Maybe set a small sapphire on the cover, Michael's birthstone." Excited by the idea, they decided to drive into town that afternoon. They had also planned to stop by the hospital to drop off a donation check, $5 million, to fund a new children's wing. It was the kind of thing they did quietly, without seeking recognition. Neither gave much thought to their appearance as they prepared to leave. Ruth slipped on her favorite lavender outfit, a modest jacket and slacks she had owned for years. Oliver pulled on his sturdy overalls and work shirt, throwing on his old leather jacket and weathered fedora. Their car, a dusty Ford truck, sputtered a little as Oliver turned the key, but it still ran strong after all these years. Their destination, Evercrest Jewelers, the most exclusive jewelry store in the city. Evercrest Jewelers gleamed like a palace. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto marble floors. Velvet-roped showcases glinted with diamonds, emeralds, and sapphires. The air smelled of expensive perfume and old money. As Oliver and Ruth walked in, the change in atmosphere was immediate. The security guard at the door gave them a look, a glance that judged and dismissed in the same breath. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone making it clear he thought they needed directions more than assistance. "We're here to inquire about a custom restoration," Ruth said calmly. The guard reluctantly directed them to the reception desk. A young woman with meticulously styled hair and flawless makeup glanced up, her smile faltering the moment she took them in. She exchanged a glance with her coworker, a silent communication of disdain. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, the friendly tone stripped from her voice. "No," Ruth said. "We were hoping to speak to someone about restoring an antique pocket watch." The receptionist tapped on her keyboard with manicured nails, then looked up coolly. "Custom work starts at $25,000, and there's a considerable wait list." "That's fine," Oliver said. The receptionist blinked, caught off guard by his easy agreement. Still skeptical, she retreated to fetch a manager. Moments later, a tall, angular man in a designer suit approached, his smile professional but hollow. His name tag read, Bryce Dalton, store manager. "Good afternoon," Bryce said, giving Oliver's overalls and Ruth's simple jacket a quick, dismissive glance. "I understand you're interested in a custom restoration?" "Yes," Ruth replied, undeterred. "For our grandson's graduation." Oliver produced the pocket watch and set it gently on the counter. Bryce barely spared it a glance. "And what budget range were you considering?" he asked, his tone making it clear he didn't expect it to be high. "We haven't set a limit," Oliver said simply. Bryce's smile thinned. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable elsewhere. I can recommend a few reputable jewelers who specialize in more economical projects." Ruth's lips tightened. "We came here because we heard you were the best." Bryce gave a little shrug. "We are, but our services are quite exclusive." It wasn't even subtle. The implication was clear. They didn't belong here. Miranda, a young sales associate nearby, tried to hide her smirk. Another couple browsing watches openly whispered and chuckled. "Still polite," Ruth said. "Could we see some examples of your custom work?" Bryce sighed theatrically. "Miranda, would you show these folks to the entry collection?" Miranda led them to a small, neglected corner. The watches there still cost tens of thousands, but none were what Ruth or Oliver envisioned for Michael. As they browsed, Ruth overheard Bryce whisper to Miranda, "Get them out quickly. They're just wasting time." Enough was enough. Ruth turned back toward the front desk, standing tall. "I'd like to speak with the owner." Bryce barked a short laugh. "Mr. Evercrest doesn't deal with retail matters." "Then call whoever you need to," Ruth said, her voice carrying clearly across the showroom. "Because I believe you're about to regret how you've treated us." There was a beat of shocked silence. Bryce, thinking he had the upper hand, signaled security. "Please escort these people out." Oliver and Ruth didn't resist. They walked to the door with heads high, leaving a trail of uncomfortable murmurs in their wake. Once outside, Ruth pulled out her phone. Within minutes, two black SUVs pulled up. Out stepped James Whitmore, the Bennett's personal attorney, and Clara Daniels, their corporate acquisitions director. They were followed by none other than Stephen Evercrest himself, the aging founder of Evercrest Jewelers. Inside, Bryce and Miranda watched, confusion turning to horror as Stephen Evercrest, face grim, crossed the sidewalk and embraced Ruth and Oliver warmly. Inside the store, Stephen's fury was palpable. "You imbeciles," he hissed at Bryce. "Do you have any idea who you just insulted?" They didn't look," Bryce stammered. That, Stephen cut him off coldly, was Oliver and Ruth Bennett. The Bennett's own controlling interest in Evercrest Holdings as of last quarter. Bryce turned ghostly pale. Stephen didn't stop there. In full view of every employee and customer, he turned to Ruth and Oliver. "Please accept my deepest apologies. This store, and every resource at our disposal, is yours." Oliver and Ruth exchanged a glance. "We'll still pay full price for the restoration," Ruth said gently. "But we hope this teaches your staff a lesson." Stephen nodded vigorously. "There will be changes." Bryce was escorted out moments later, his career shattered not by the Bennett's wealth, but by his own arrogance. In the following weeks, Evercrest Jewelers underwent a transformation. A new plaque hung by the door. "Every person who walks through these doors deserves respect, regardless of their shoes, their jacket, or their story." And inside a custom-made display case, alongside the rarest diamonds, gleamed an antique pocket watch restored to glory, a symbol not of money, but of legacy. Oliver and Ruth never told Michael the full story behind the watch he received at graduation. They simply handed it to him, with the inscription inside. To Michael, "Never judge worth by what you see. True value runs deeper." Michael, who had learned from his grandparents the meaning of humility and character, wore the watch proudly through every chapter of his life. And the Bennetts? They continued to live simply, love deeply, and remind the world, quietly, persistently, that appearances were never the true measure of greatness.